Cowboys Nation, welcome back to Sons of the Star. I'm your host, Dallas. Joining me again, and as always, is Cowboy Regg. Cowboy Regg, we've had, let's see, about 4 full days after the Dallas wildcard loss to the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. How have your last few days been as a Cowboys fan, and how are we feeling after those 4 days?
Much better. It still hurts that we're not in the dance, but I've moved on. The Philly loss was some sweet therapy for all of us that kind of put a jump start on our healing. So
Yeah.
now we can start talking about next year and not worry about watching that team in green in the playoff game next weekend.
Yeah, their demise has been quite entertaining, I will say. And if it wasn't for that, um, I totally agree with you. This whole week would be a lot worse. But at least we could laugh about Philly on Monday night. Um, I would say for me, I've accepted it, but I haven't gotten over it yet. There's still a lot of frustration for me as a Cowboys fan these past few days, and you know, like I said, I've accepted it. I'm trying to move on, but I think watching football again this weekend, I'm going to really enjoy these games. I think we have a good slate of games, but it's a little painful for me to think that the Green Bay Packers that started the season at 2-5, that are a young team, that were 9-8, barely getting into the playoffs. They've obviously moved past us, and they're still in. And you got teams like the Houston Texans that are still in the dance. They've gone farther than the Cowboys. Um, we're going to get into game predictions later in the show, but I think the Detroit Lions have a great shot at going to an NFC championship game. And this isn't going to hold true for you, Cowboy Reg, and a lot of Cowboys fans out there. But for my generation of Cowboys fans, we are going to see the Detroit Lions in an NFC championship game before we see our Dallas Cowboys in an NFC championship game. That hurts. I've been thinking about that a lot this week. And, good for you, Detroit. You've been through a lot, but that just kind of shows you the status of this organization right now. Um, and then Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 9-8 have gone farther than the 12-5 Dallas Cowboys. So those are the kinds of things that are keeping me from moving
Told
on
you
from
Baker was
this
going to
loss.
win. I told
Yeah,
you
you
about
did.
Baker.
Baker cooked. He cooked. You got to let him cook. Unlike Russell Wilson, he actually cooks. He won't burn down your
Mm-hmm.
kitchen. That dude cooks.
Mm-mm.
They don't call him Baker for no reason. He doesn't cook, he bakes, all right? He's baking out there. Shout out to
There he
Baker
is.
Mayfield. Cheers to Baker Mayfield, by the way. Cheers, Baker. Thank you for doing God's work.
What? But your horns down or something?
Horns down, baby. All the way. All right,
I'm
so
not going to go that. I'm not going to go there. I'm not horns down.
oh, come on. We are a TCU Horn Frogs podcast, by the way. That we could represent the DFW, not the Austin area. Anyway, Cowboy Reg, I want to hear your takes on so in the middle of the year, we're in a race with Philly to take the NFC East title. Okay. The the Philadelphia Eagles are off to a 10-1 start after going to the Super Bowl last year. And, I had plenty of doubts. I think if you didn't have doubts as a Cowboys fan that we weren't going to win the division, you're crazy, first of all. Um, But, Philly seemed kind of untouchable at 10-1. I know they had their issues. They won a lot of close games, but Philly's 10-1, and we see a collapse from them. Obviously, that happened when the Cowboys, took care of them in that second game of the year. But for me, I mean, Philly really seemed like they were, the favorites in the NFC until they lost to us in the Niners. But let's talk about the two organizations at this point. Who's in a better spot? Is it Dallas after an embarrassing loss to Green Bay, or is it Philly after an embarrassing loss to Tampa? Who's in a worse spot right now, in your opinion?
Well, I think Philly's in a worse spot, and not just saying that because you know how I feel about Philly, but I think their locker room is in disarray. I mean, one thing, and we get into Mike McCarthy tonight, but one thing that we learned in the last 2 days about Mike McCarthy is that his players vouch for him. His players have stood up for him and made statements about they want to play for him. I did not hear that coming out of the Philly locker room. I see a lot of finger pointing over there, and I kind of wonder if they might be in a rebuild mode right now, realistically. And I think we're in a win now mode. I'm not sure which is better, but I think we will have a better team in the near future.
Yeah, I totally agree. You took a lot of my points. First of all, the one thing you failed to mention is, did you guys see the video of the Philly fan throwing an entire bowl of popcorn at Nick Sirianni on his walk?
Yep.
I mean, that is vintage Philly right there. I mean, that is chef's
Yep.
kiss. I mean, you know we hate him, but I I love that. I mean, that was impressive to me. First of all, did do you think if you did he plan on throwing that bowl of popcorn at him? Because it was almost a full bowl, which at an NFL game will probably run you, you know, when those souvenir buckets, it's probably 20, 25 bucks there. So do you think,
Yeah.
you know, when the team was down, he's like, you know, screw this. I'm saving half my tub of popcorn to throw on my head coach on his way into the locker room. I mean, hats off to that Philly fan. He got arrested, but I'm sure there's plenty of scumbag Eagles fans that are helping pay his bail. Um, but anyway, it doesn't have a lot to do with the future of the franchise. I mean, it does. We know that, you know, there isn't a lot of faith in this Philly team right now. Um, and I think the Jason Kelsey retirement kind of tells you a lot about their future. And like you said, they could potentially be in more of a rebuild mode. Um, if you haven't heard, Jason Kelsey, the center for the Eagles, you know, future Hall of Fame, he is retiring. And he really didn't deal with a lot of injury problems this year. I think that's a guy that could probably come back for one more year if he felt that the team can make another run. But I think that tells you a lot of where that locker room is at right now. If you have veteran like Jason Kelsey stepping away from the team, to me, from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like he probably could have played another year. And they have a lot of questions on defense. The health of their team is not as good as the Cowboys. But like you said, I don't know which is worse because yes, the Cowboys, I truly believe will be a better team next year, um, depending on what the Eagles do in the offseason. But it's hard to tell about the future of the franchises. They might have an early start on us when it comes to rebuilding, um, because at this point we're going to repeat the insanity that we've had the last few years and give another go at it. But it's hard to say who's going to end up, you know, in a better spot. But if you're talking about the 2024-2025 season, I would say the Dallas Cowboys are in probably the best shape still in the NFC East regular season wise. And that might be hard for some fans to hear right now, but that's just the facts of the situation. Um, any final thoughts on Philly, Cowboy Reg? One more chance to take some shots at our beloved rivals.
Well, I know I've been miserable for 4 or 5 days, but Philly's been miserable for 6 or 7 weeks. This losing has been going on.
Yeah.
So I'm still gonna say we're in better shape. We can. I mean, we both ended our postseason early, but any realistic Philly fan knew that was coming. They've been miserable for month and a half. So we got that to hang our hat on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I would say their window is definitely closed at this point. I would consider it, and unless some unforeseen things happen in the offseason, where you come off a Super Bowl, you get off to that hot start, and you fumble the bag, as the kids are saying these days at the end of the season. Um, so yeah, I think that window might be it's if it's not closed, I won't say it's closed because they have a lot of talent on that team, but it's closer than ours is to completely closed. But let's move on from that. But yeah, like you said, I think for most Cowboys fans that was a positive. And if you're looking at the NFC East next year, um, I think the Cowboys are going to be favorites coming into next year to win the division, even though we can't seem to win back-to-back division titles in the NFC East. But you look at the other three teams, and the Cowboys are in the best shape. Um, but
I mean,
that'll get
that's
us
the
to our next.
curse. We got to break that curse. we're breaking
That would
curses,
be
but we forgot about that could be the curse. The first
that would
team
be a
that
good
wins 2 in a
start.
row, gonna do you win 2 in a row, you're gonna win the whole thing. Break the curse.
That would be a good start. Um, yeah, 100%. Um, so like we've alluded to, the Cowboys might have a similar outlook on next season because, like most of y'all were heard, we were prepared to come on this podcast and talk about the coaching changes that were likely going to happen in Dallas, future head coach candidates. But we all got the news yesterday that after meeting with Jerry Jones, that Mike McCarthy will stay as the Cowboys head coach for the 2024-2025 season. Um, Initial thoughts on that, Cowboy Reg, and I know at first, we got on right after the game and thought he's gone, he's gone. But as these few days went on, did you think that he was going to stay, or did you really think that Jerry was going to move on from him?
Oh, we definitely leaned in the last 24 hours towards him staying. Our knee-jerk reaction was fire Mike, fire Mike. And then we started looking at, who are we going to bring in? Mike Tomlin? Well, no, he's committed to the Steelers again. Are we really going to bring in Belichick? Is Jerry going to get along with Bill? Is Bill going to want to listen to Jerry? Is Bill want to control the whole organization? Because it's not happening. So you cross him off the list. So Mike Vrabel, defensive mind. I like him a lot. Is he better than Mike McCarthy as a head coach, though? Would you say Mike Vrabel has proven to be a better coach than Mike McCarthy? Are you willing to take that risk? And I think in the end, no, they weren't willing to take the risk, and they probably made the right decision.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I really think that, any other head coach would be a bit of a gamble. Obviously, we were ready to talk about Mike Tomlin on this podcast because, we thought that that would be a good fit. I don't think anyone, a lot of people will say that, hey, Belichick's going to walk into the Cowboys organization and take us to a Super Bowl. Uh, I don't know if, that might have been a knee jerk reaction to some, but I think after digesting this whole situation for a few days, you realize that that's most likely not going to happen. And you talk about two, I mean, Belichick's what, 72 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
You talk about two old, stubborn guys that have seen a lot of success in the NFL. Um, you could just foresee them butting heads constantly. I did see a story come out this week about how Belichick actually approached Jerry Jones back in '96 about coming to the Cowboys.
96. Yeah.
Yeah, that talk about, something that could have changed the landscape for the entire NFL and sports in general. I'm not saying that Belichick walks into the Cowboys organization in '96 that and wins 6 Super Bowls, but think about how close he was at that point and how different things would be now. It's kinda crazy to think about, but anyway, yeah, I think that, you know, Jerry Jones at the end of the day is a businessman, and winning has brought his business success, and that's why we are here today as the most successful, profitable sports franchise in the world is due to Jerry Jones. Now, I'm not going to say that every decision he's made in the past 30 years has been the right one, but at the end of the day, he is a businessman and he made the, in his mind, the best business move for the Dallas Cowboys. And, Jerry's 82 years old. He doesn't have a lot of years left, even though he's in good shape for his age. And I don't think he's at the point looking at this team right now, he's not ready for a rebuild, as you could see that.
No.
Um, so you talk about the regular season success and all the money and publicity and all the things that are, attracting about the Dallas Cowboys in the past few years. He's selling tickets. He's, for the most part, this organization's in a good spot without the playoff success, but he was not in, you know, the frame of mind to move on from this team and this coaching staff yet, at least at the Mike McCarthy level. So, that's a business move that he made and he wasn't, he's not ready to restart on this team yet because we all know that those rebuilds take time and he decided to keep Mike McCarthy. So, you know, what does this mean for this team right now? Cowboy Regg.
Well, from what we've seen from the players, and one player I pointed out to you immediately yesterday was Jake Ferguson coming immediately to celebrate the announcement, and
Mhm.
other players tweet about it and make statements to the press about it now that the players wanted him back, and I think that was a big part of it, and makes me feel better about the decision as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with all his faults that we've seen the past few years, I mean, um, the players liking him is not one of them, and that's a good sign. And maybe they like him too much, and maybe he doesn't get on them as much that he should. And hopefully, there's a little more accountability in that locker room next year. But
I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, and I listened to Mike McCarthy's press conference today. He said he sat in Jerry Jones's office for over 3 hours, and he never had to um, plead for his job. Those are his words. I don't know whether that's true or not. We weren't in the room, but he said that that's not what the organization, or that's not what Jerry Jones was deciding to do with the organization, and he didn't have to plead for his job from Jerry. So, I guess I'm just going to take his word from it and say, here it is. You have one more year. Whatever happens with the defensive coordinator, we're going to talk about in a second. But Dak is coming up on a contract year. We have a lot. The core of this team is still going to be intact for next year, and McCarthy's contract is up at the end of next year. So here we are. We have one more year left of this. That could be a great thing. That could be a bad thing. But I think stability is a big deal in the NFL. And for the most part, I think you're going into next season pretty stable. Um, so for me, if you're a Chicago Bulls fan out there, to me this is the last dance. And
Yeah.
it's a different scenario because we're not coming off of 5 championships, fresh off five
Our
championships.
first
This is
dance. It's our first dance and our last dance.
it's the
You can
first
make it.
and last dance. And for most of us, if you dance like me, your first dance is your last dance. So there you go. But
There it is.
that's what it reminded me of. This is the last dance. You have one more shot to prove yourself. It's it's pretty much Super Bowl or bust, at least NFC Championship or bust. But you have one more chance to take a run at this thing, and I think if you're Mike McCarthy, you got to be pretty thankful because I don't think a lot of people would be given this chance that he's been given. So I don't know. It's hard to see him changing that much in one year, but the sense of urgency for him and this team should be at an all-time high, and that could either create bad pressure or good pressure. I think that's a positive, but Jerry Jones is saying, "Hey, I'm 82 years old. I have a team that was the second seed in the NFC. I'm going to give him one more chance." So what do we do, Cowboy Reg? I mean, do you feel the same way about that, or is there more to it than that?
I think that's it. I think it's you didn't come out of that meeting with Jerry and say, "Hey, Jerry just gave me an extension."
Hmm.
He came out of that meeting, as as the head coach, as if that was the news, which was he was already under contract as the head coach. So the news is he's still the head coach. There's no extension, which means Jerry didn't give him full backing, which means Jerry's put him in the hot seat officially. I don't consider it a lame duck situation, as some people are tweeting about. Hey, if he's only got 1 year, he becomes a lame duck coach. He knows he's got one foot out the door. That's not how it works with Mike McCarthy. He doesn't need the money. He's not a 37, 38-year-old head coach. This is
Right.
probably his job, win or lose. This is his last job as a head coach in the NFL. I would assume, could be wrong,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's about the money for him. So I think he is going to coach with urgency, and I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And kind of a fun stat to throw out there too. Mike McCarthy does have one Super Bowl win as a head coach. Guess what year he won that Super Bowl in?
Fifth,
His fifth year as head coach. And
yeah,
so hey, maybe maybe Mike cooks in the 5th year. I don't know. I mean, I'll definitely believe it when I see it, but like I said in the last podcast, we're gonna find something to hang our hats on, and we're gonna make ourselves believe in this team again, and we'll be ready to get hurt again next year. Don't you worry. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I don't think this is a one foot out the door situation. I think Mike McCarthy throws the kitchen sink at this. Um, I think he does everything, and I think the organization as a whole should do that. I don't think they should pull back anything next year. I mean, we have a lot of offseason to get into some of the moves that Dallas should make, but for me, I'm making every move possible to get this team to the highest level next year and compete for a Super Bowl. That's just how I feel. I mean, I'm talking trading draft picks for free agents, like, or not for free agents, but for other guys. Like I'm talking about it all. Like win now. You have 1 year to win an NFC championship, and that's what you're given. But we'll see. I guess the only negative I see happening is, let's say the Cowboys make a run at this thing next year and lose in the NFC championship game. What do they do with Mike McCarthy? And do we just, I mean, that would be a huge positive for this organization. But if he does have a good year and maybe wins a game or two in the playoffs, but doesn't get to the Super Bowl, do you extend him at that point, or do you start completely over? So as much as we want to talk, it's do or die next year. And this team, you have one more shot at this. That might not be the case, but we will see. Um, so let's get into your thoughts on the defensive coordinator. So um, Dan Quinn has had interviews this week for the Seattle Seahawks, the Carolina Panthers. Am I missing any there? Did he interview with any other team? I thought that was it this week, but
Commanders? Did he interview with the Commanders?
I don't know that for sure. But y'all have Google, you can look it up. But he is the point is he's interviewing with other teams this week. No news on him, as of late. Um, but let's say the Cowboys, you know, don't have Dan Quinn here next year. Who do you think are potential candidates for that defensive coordinator position? Do you think Dan Quinn is coming back? Um, what are your thoughts on Dan Quinn in general? Not necessarily about his last game as a defense coordinator, because we're going to get into that, but as it stands right now, where do you think the future lies for Dan Quinn?
I think Dan Quinn's gone. I think it's a done deal. If I had to bet, I would bet he's going to Seattle. The interesting thing about Seattle is he worked with Pete Carroll and they had
Hmm.
success. And now Pete Carroll's moving to the front office. That's a hard job for anyone to take, knowing that Pete Carroll is sitting in that office next to you as you're possibly losing or not doing well. That's a lot of pressure for a new coach. Dan Quinn, on the other hand, he's worked in the organization before and had success. He brings respect, he brings experience, and I think he's the right guy for the job in Seattle. I think Dallas knows he's going to be gone, so they're saying nice things about him, but they don't want him back. We're going to get a new defensive coordinator. I cannot possibly see them returning Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn. That is a situation where you can't sell to the fans that you're concerned and you're willing to make change, because there'd be no change at all if that's the case. Therefore, I believe Dan Quinn's gone.
All right. Well, there it is, folks. I, I I hope you're right. I think that we've talked about all these things, and a lot of things repeating themselves for next season, but there has to, someone's head has to be on the chopping block at the end of this year, and I think that is Dan Quinn at this point. You have to make
It's all
some
your
kind of
fault, Dan. You got to take the fall, buddy. Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Somebody's
Uh,
somebody's got to take it.
yeah, unfortunately, with all the great things he's done for our team these past few years, I think he's going to be the guy that falls on the sword for the most part. I think there's blame to go around everywhere, and I think most Cowboys fans are putting the blame everywhere. But there has to be an answer for this performance, and really, the stat that is bothering me that I did not know before this game is his 0-6 record against his former coaches. while he was in Atlanta. So Mike McDaniel, Matt Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, all 0-6. That's scary, and especially, the McDaniel part, whatever. We lost to him in the regular season. It was a tight game. I don't put that loss solely on the defense, even though they allowed that last drive for Miami to go kick a field goal. But the LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan thing is scary because obviously we just got our doors blown off by the Green Bay. We've struggled mightily against the 49ers, and those teams aren't going anywhere next season. So if he can't beat those guys, we're screwed. So I think that's the biggest thing going into this, um, and his lack of good performances in big games is just kinda, that's the outlier here. So, yeah, I think it's time to move on from Dan Quinn. I agree with you. Unfortunately, the way that last game went, I think his stock has gone down quite a bit, and I worry now that he might not get picked up for those jobs. But I think you know, from an organizational standpoint, there are some younger guys out there that aren't quite ready to be head coaches, that a team like Seattle would have to pick the younger guy, the inexperienced guy over Dan Quinn. And I think that, like you said, with Pete Carroll being in the organization, you know, I think our best bet to get rid of Dan Quinn right now is for Seattle to hire him. I think that's his most likely, his landing spot. But let's say he doesn't get picked up from another team. Um, what do the Cowboys do at that point?
I think I think they're hoping that doesn't happen
Mhm.
because it'd be a hard man to fire, but they have to make that change. If not, I mean, I would say they don't care what the fans think, but they came in the press conference saying, here's what's going on, fans. We need your support. And that tells me a lot that they do care what the fans think. If they bring both coordinators back, I mean, unless Mike's going to give up play calling, if we're going to get a play caller, something like that, and they say, here's our change. But I don't think the offense was necessarily the problem in these big games where the offense has struggled a little bit. The defense has played horrid. So I think Dan falls on the sword and he's out the door. And I hope he gets picked up as a head coach because I don't want to see him get fired, but I don't think they'd have a choice. They cannot bring him back. I'll be shocked if they do.
Yeah, I agree. At this point, we have some reports that don't have a lot of validity to them that they're keeping Dan Quinn at this point. I wouldn't look in I would not believe that right now. If you're a Cowboys fan out there, I would let this play out. The teams are interviewing. They're looking at, each team is waiting for other teams' decisions, right? So the Mike McCarthy staying in Dallas impacted the league. The potential hiring of Bill Belichick to the Atlanta Falcons is going to impact the entire league. And eventually there's going to be openings for Quinn to be hired. And like I said, I think they'll choose him with experience, even with a few flaws, over some of the younger coaches without that experience. So I I agree with you. I think he gets picked up somewhere else, but if he doesn't, most likely what's going to happen is Dan Quinn's going to be the defensive coordinator next year. So, you know, we're not going to get into all that because if that happens, we will probably do a whole podcast on that, you know. But let's just let this play out right now. We're going to believe that Dan Quinn's moving on. Let's talk about some of the potential defensive coordinators that could come in next year. My biggest question here for you, Cowboy Reg, do we keep this in house or do we do some searching for a new defensive coordinator?
Mike Vrabel, if he doesn't get picked up as a head coach, he's the new Dan Quinn. Dan didn't get another head job offered at first, and Cowboys swooped in and offered him the high-paying defensive coordinator job. And if Mike Vrabel doesn't get picked up, man, I would grab him and I'd say, Al Harris, we love you. Stay with us. You're the next guy after Mike. But if Al walks, he walks. Mike Vrabel's a guy. Mike Vrabel gets picked up as a head coach. Al Harris is the guy. Keep it in house. Give it to the new, younger, exciting coach that he could be a head coach someday. He's got to be a coordinator first. Give him a shot. He deserves it.
Yeah, 100%. I think Vrabel, and I didn't think Vrabel would take a job like Dallas to, demote himself from head coach to defensive coordinator. But, I was thinking this point, and then you made this point on Twitter. You have to look at this as if I go into Dallas and do a good job, you know, there's two possible scenarios. We can have a fantastic season and potentially win the NFC Championship and go to the Super Bowl, and I look great for my next job, or hey, we have success in Dallas. I love it here. If I'm Vrabel and he leads our team to an NFC Championship next year, I'm staying in Dallas. I've seen
Yeah,
success because that would be farther than he's ever made it in his coaching career. Also, hey, if I do a decent job and this doesn't work out next year, the Cowboys are moving on from McCarthy. I'm a head coach that's in the organization. Hey, you know, now I'm the head coach. And like you said, hopefully Al Harris stays and he gets promoted to DC. So that would be a really good move. There's a few other guys out there that I think that same scenario works out for. One of them being Brian Flores in Minnesota, the former head coach um, for the Miami Dolphins, defensive guy, current defensive coordinator at Minnesota. The Vikings are in trouble right now, and he is, there's a lot of smoke around his name saying, "Hey, this guy is moving." That's another guy that can move to Dallas and think the same thing. These are guys that are looking for head coaching jobs, but that Dallas DC job could be a stepping stone. Um, Another name is Mike McDonald from Baltimore. Um, I don't see that one happening as much because he's had so much success at Baltimore. But
yeah.
let's say that same scenario happens again. If he thinks that, hey, Dallas could be a stepping stone to a head coaching job, maybe he takes it. But I think if you don't get one of those 3 guys, I think you have to keep it in-house and you have to stay with Al Harris, because, there's a lot of talks right now. Ironically, the biggest one, before this last game was that he might go to Green Bay where he formerly played, but I think you have to keep it in-house if we're talking about, "Hey, we're gonna run this thing back as similar we're gonna make the team, we're gonna give everyone one more shot to do the damn thing." So I would think you keep it in-house, but hey, that's a big move, Moving from defensive backs coach to the defensive coordinator is a huge move, and Al Harris is a great coach, and the players love him. I'm not saying he can't do the job, but there's a lot of uncertainty there. Um, so we will see how that plays out. But bottom line here is I agree with you, Cowboy Reg. You either make a big, home run hire at DC and hopefully you sell it as, hey, we're gonna have an opening next year potentially if this doesn't go the way we planned, or show the league that you could do a good job as DC again, and then you can move on to the head coaching job, or you keep it in house with Al Harris. But I think worst case scenario, we're back with Dan Quinn, and I don't think Dan Quinn leads us to an ugly season next year and we miss the playoffs, but I think we're getting similar results.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. That's all I can say. Like you said, we'll have a whole show about it if he is, because I'll have some choice words for that decision. But I'm going to trust that that's not going to happen, and he's going to get a job in Seattle, and we're going to wish him farewell.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll keep you guys updated out there in Cowboys Nation, but that's where we're at right now. So we don't have any extra information than it's out there right now, but we're gonna keep checking it, and these next few days will tell a lot on how those interviews went. All right, so let's move on from defensive coordinator. Is there anything else you want to mention about the organization, Jerry Jones, any coaching, things at this point, or do you want to move on to the Packers game and talk about that a little more before we bury it?
Oh, yeah, I think I've made my point. I think there's a change coming, and the only change left to make is at DC. So if they're going to sell us on committing to change and committing to getting better, this has to be the answer. So let's trust that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I agree. Um, all right, so we've talked a lot. We've had some time to reflect on this game against the Green Bay Packers this week. We've listened to the coaches. We've heard all the talking heads about this team, this Cowboys team, the players, specifically Dak Prescott. Um, let's just go over some of those things right now. So, my first takeaway from this game after digesting it a little bit is total lack of preparation and a bad plan going in. And what do we mean by that? I think on both sides of the ball that we changed our identity from where we've been all season, whether it was to confuse the Packers or they got nervous. I can't really put my finger on it, but would you agree that both sides of the ball look totally different than what we've seen all year? And that from a coaching preparation standpoint?
Well, I think on the defensive side of the ball, there was a reason why they played differently. And I know you know what I want to talk about tonight, so you let me know when you want me to touch on that. But on the offensive side of the ball, I think McCarthy is a historian, and McCarthy's known for his hit when he had his year off of going in and just studying the game and creating new plays and just engulfing himself in the game of football. And I think McCarthy knows traditionally run first offensive teams win in the playoffs. They win in the Super Bowl, they win in the playoffs. And he went away from our identity as a pass first offense and switched it over to a run first offense because that's what the stats told him to do. And he made a mistake because he couldn't run the ball and we couldn't get Dak into a rhythm until we were down. And, if I could have those first two plays of the game back, I would want Dak to throw the ball, even if they're overthrows, just to get that out of his system. And maybe things go differently from the start.
Yeah, that's a great point. I haven't thought of it like that. But you definitely saw that change and you're right. Teams that have had success in the playoffs, that is their identity. And I think that, we're going to touch on it in the offseason, but if we had a good running game in a good power run first offense in this game, it's totally different. And that's kind of what Green Bay did to us. And we were able to stop them a few times, but at the end of the day, they diced us up on play action. Jordan Love is great on play action. We saw Dak Prescott early on in his career, in a run first offense with Zeke when Zeke was playing at his best. And that's when this offense really clicked. So I totally agree on that point. Let's get into your theory on why the defense chose to play differently in this game than they have been all season.
Well, you blame Trevon Diggs. It all goes back to Trevon Diggs. When Trevon Diggs goes down in the preseason, we're left with two corners. We got Deron Bland, we got Stephon Gilmore. That's all we got.
Hmm.
So when Gilmore hurts his shoulder and he says, "Hey Dan, I can play, but here's what's wrong with my shoulder." Well, what we know about that injury now is that it doesn't hold up well on contact. It's extremely painful. It could go out of place again. He could have limited movement if he sustains a big contact. So Quinn is faced with the dilemma of do we sit Stefan and bring in what now is a player who they never had any intentions of seeing a snap all of a sudden starting in a playoff game. And I think Dan was afraid of that. So he
Hmm.
let Gilmore play, but he said, we're going to play soft coverage. We're going to play deep zone. We're going to give him the middle and we're going to try to avoid contact. And hopefully they won't throw Gilmore's way, anyways. But they did. They threw the ball all over the field through our zone. And because of that zone, we got no pass rush. Because we got no pass rush, he had more time to throw. So this was a domino effect. My theory is it started with Trevon Diggs. And my immediate reaction when Diggs went down was, we're not going to win the Super Bowl without him. I started to believe that we could because Deron Bland, but I never considered an injury from Bland or Gilmore. We got the injury, and I think that was the
Yeah.
difference in the way he called the game.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Obviously more things are coming to fruition and more knowledge is coming out about this game. But that makes a lot of sense. And let's just talk really quick about when we say we're playing a little soft and that we were allowing, a lot of passes down the middle. I'm gonna show you a little chart from NFL Next Gen Stats here if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, you can look up this on NFL Next Gen Stats. This is all of Jordan Love's completions during this game. You could see, you know, we're playing man out here on the outside, like a more like a cover two defense here with two deep safeties. And you could see where Love just diced us up down the middle here. These are all his completions. In the blue is his touchdowns here, which, as you can remember, right down the middle. And these are short to intermediate passes. The longest pass he had of the day was 26 yards. So they took one deep shot. And we all remember this play on the edge here. And I think Jaron Curse made that breakup. But that's what happened. That was the story of this game on offense. Whenever they needed a big play, someone was open down the middle and they hit him. And Romeo Dobbs was like 8 for 8. All of his completions were down the middle, and they just diced us up. So if you play that soft coverage, that soft zone, that's what we're talking about. That's what everyone's been talking about. Your safeties played too deep, and you got beat down the middle. And you know what this reminded me of is a lot about that last, um, couple-minute drive that Detroit had on us, where they were just hitting Laporta over and over again down the middle, all the way down the field, and we almost lost that Detroit game playing this same kind of soft coverage. Um, that is, it's a valid reason to change your identity, but at the end of the day, I hate the fact that we did. Again, injury to Gilmore or not, you have someone step in and the defense must, I guess I thought we looked a little confused out there. And I know that the Packers and Jordan Love were good against man coverage all year long, but it's like you said, the biggest issue here, whether it's man or zone, is that the pass rush and having 0 sacks for this defense is completely unheard of. I don't think there's a single team in the NFL that we beat if we get zero sacks on them. So, yeah, I think you're spot on with the theory on Gilmore. I just wish he would have thought about it differently and said, you know, I'm I'm sticking to my identity. We are who we are. We've played 17 games this year. We're 12-5. This is our defense. I'm going to trust in my guys to make plays. And the other issue here is we have a lot of ball hawks on the defensive side of the ball. And I think by playing soft, you don't have as much tight man on man coverage. And that's why you never saw anything even close to an interception. Close. Let's see. Jordan Love had 5 incompletions in this game. 5. And can you even think of a time where he was close to being intercepted? No, in
And
I go ahead.
you think about Green Bay's first interception and how that was probably pass interference. I told you on the last podcast, I don't mind the no call. I wouldn't argue if they called it, but I don't mind the no call. But they're playing physical. They're playing right on top of our guy. And if the ball's slightly overthrown, the ball's slightly underthrown, the ball's slightly too high or too low, you got a 50-50 shot at it. You're playing soft zone. The only thing you're there to do is make a tackle. I
Mhm.
don't understand that. So yeah, I would have loved to get a redo on this with some man to man, some bump coverage, some physical play at the line of scrimmage. Even if you get a couple penalties,
Right.
you're still going to let those receivers know they're going to have to fight through coverage over and over again. We didn't make them fight through anything until they
Yeah.
got the ball, and then if they got past the safety, they're gone.
Yeah, that was just puzzling to me, and you take away that chance to because if you allow let's say you allow the same stats from this game, Jordan Love has the same game, but let's say he throws 2 picks. This is a totally different game. If he throws 1 pick in the first half, it's a totally different game. But there wasn't even that threat to throw interceptions because of how soft you're playing. And this Dallas defensive back room for the past year, they have been ball hawks. Like You guys realize that Deron Bland set the NFL record for pick sixes this year. You take that out of the game. You take it out of
Yeah.
the game. I mean, let's say they're up 14-0 and you play tight and he gets a pick six. Do you think that makes a difference in this game? Hell yeah, it does. And that's what really pisses me off. We changed. We're the favorites. We're the big dogs. We're in our
Yeah.
house. We haven't lost in our house in 16 freaking
Yeah.
games, and we go in and change our identity.
Yeah, we did.
That's gonna hurt for a long time.
Shocking. It's shocking. Yeah. But I mean, I think I have a theory why we did it on
Yeah,
both
it
sides.
makes
And
sense.
and we'll
It makes
never
sense.
know. They're not gonna come clean and say this is why we made a mistake. They're not gonna say that. I don't expect it for them to ever say that. So it's gonna be a theory. It's not gonna be proven. It's not gonna be disproven. But that's what I think happened. And it turned out to be a gamble on both ends. You're flipping the coin on both offense and defense, and you're losing both flips. That's a bad combination.
Yeah, I think it was high risk by taking low risk, if that makes any sense. Like it's
Yeah.
risky because you're changing how you're used to playing, but you're playing like a lower risk type of game. That's what's just so weird about it. It's like you didn't go out in the game and take a bunch of home runs and fall short. And you could see them losing like that, but it's like you changed the way you were like conservative, but also
Yeah.
by being so conservative, you're putting your team at a very high risk because it's not how you play. So that was weird. I,
Yeah.
I don't want to get go ahead.
Yeah. I think you'll like this analogy. I think it's like sending Aaron Judge up to the plate with the bases loaded and telling him to bunt. Go ahead,
Right.
just
Yeah.
bunt it
No.
in there. I don't care how many home runs you got this year, Aaron. I need you to lay down a bunt here. And then he strikes out trying to bunt. That's what happened.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. And hey, great segment in the baseball season because that's the only thing getting me through this painful loss is the thought of opening
It's
day.
coming. It's
Yeah.
coming.
Um so yeah, that's how I feel overall. We changed our identity. That's the bottom line. And I hate that. And I think the preparation was really poor and that also the players didn't execute to their full potential. I don't want to get into Dak Prescott right now. We know he had a bad game. He has struggled in big games, and I think
This
he's
is my
still a great
quarterback.
yeah
That's my quarterback.
yeah, and I still think he's a great quarterback. He is not going anywhere for next season. Um, so he's going to be our
No.
quarterback one next year, and hopefully he figures some stuff out in the offseason, and hopefully the team helps him out um, next
Who's
season.
going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback two?
That's a good question.
We got to talk about that in another
We will,
segment
yeah.
because I got a theory.
We
I got a theory
okay.
on that.
All right, I love that, and I don't wanna I don't wanna talk too much,
We got all off
about
season to talk about that.
yeah, we have
All off
so
season.
much time. We didn't expect we were supposed to be doing a game preview right now, so we can't get into all of our offseason theories because we gotta put content
Yeah.
out for the people. We gotta give the people what they want, so, yeah, we
Right.
can't
That's
get
the
into
third.
that right now. But kids, we're gonna talk about this game more because it's the last game we have to go off of in the offseason, but, quickly, that's I'm wrapping a bow on it right now as we we weren't who they thought we weren't who we thought we were. How about that? I don't know if that makes any sense.
We were who they
Um,
thought we were.
no, we weren't who they thought we were, but it was a good surprise for the Green Bay
It
Packers.
was a good surprise
Like
for them.
we played into their strengths, we played into our weaknesses. It's just it's shocking stuff, folks. But hey, that's the Dallas Cowboys for you in a nutshell. We get the 2 seed. We're we're 12-5, and we change who we are. But anyway, any final thoughts about this game, Cowboy Reg, before we get into some game picks for the weekend?
My final thought on that game is I hope they learned from it. I hope the coaching staff and the players learned from what just happened. Don't let it happen again because you only got one more shot at it, like we talked about early. So learn from it. You learn from it, we'll be all right next year.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully this sends, a shockwave through the organization and something changes for us because I can't deal with much more of this in the future. And I don't think we've had the one thing we've been missing in all our playoff woes was a game like this. And maybe that's what, once you hit rock bottom like this, you can only go up from here, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully something like this sends a shockwave through the organization, something changes and we can get over the hump. God, I hope so because that sucked. All right, Cowboy Red. So enough about the Cowboys. This we're gonna close out the podcast by not talking about the Cowboys at all because we're out of the playoffs. Let's get into some game picks for next week. Um, so not only did the Cowboys lose, I went 1-7 on our predictions from last podcast. So I had a really tough football weekend. I did horrible. 1-7.
So you're saying I won our picks last year or last week. What I
You,
have two?
yeah, no, you had three because
Yeah.
you picked Kansas City, you picked Tampa, and we both picked the Bills. Was the only one I got right. So watch out for me. I'm about to get hot this week. All right, let's start. Um, There's apparently another football team in Texas in the AFC that has gone farther than the Cowboys this year. They cannot win this game because I cannot watch the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans go to conference championship games without ever seeing the Cowboys do the same. Anyway, I said we weren't going to talk about the Cowboys, so I'm going to stop. The Houston Texans and CJ Stroud are heading to Baltimore to play the number one seed in the AFC Ravens. All right. Baltimore is favored um, by 9 points right now. So let's hear it. Who you got?
I'll say exactly what I said last week, and I was 100% wrong. But what I said about Cleveland, I'm going to say about Baltimore. I don't think there's any way that CJ Stroud comes in there and carves up that defense. They need him to in order to win. They need him to play at a very, very high level, which he did last week. Can't see that happening in the elements of Baltimore. They were at home last week in Houston. That's something I didn't consider when I picked Cleveland. They go to
Yeah.
Baltimore. I think they've already overachieved. I think they're done. Baltimore wins. I want to say they win handily, but CJ proved me wrong and he made me a fan. I'm a fan now. So I think Houston covers. I think it's a close game, but low scoring game. And I think Baltimore wins it in the fourth quarter. But I would think Houston can cover this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna write this down because we need to keep track. Um, so you got that's I would say that's a safe bet. Houston covering, Baltimore winning. Um, Man, I'm a big fan of this Baltimore team. I lived in Delaware for 3 years. I had to deal with Commanders fans, Eagles fans, like Giants fans, and Baltimore fans. And by far, that almost made me a Baltimore fan because I was like, you guys
They're
aren't
not.
that
They're
bad.
the lesser of. That's the lesser of four evils. I'm with
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Yeah. So and I like the color purple. I think it's a great color for a football team. Um, I don't know if I'm sold on Lamar taking them to and winning a Super Bowl, but I'll tell you who I am sold on, and that's Kyle Hamilton. And we are big Notre Dame football fans, and Kyle Hamilton is a dog. So I
He's
think
my
that
guy.
defense. I don't worry about the defense at all. I do worry about the Ravens starters haven't played in a football game since December
You
31st,
know.
and they're
You
going to
know
play
how I
this
feel
game
about
on
that.
the 20th. They're going to play this game on the 20th. So they're going to play. It's going to be 3 weeks since these starters have played
Yep.
in a game. That makes me a little nervous. And with this Houston offense,
Yep.
man,
They're
I'm gonna go and I'm gonna, I'm not gonna make any bold predictions for this game. I'm gonna say ditto on your pick. I got Houston covering, Baltimore winning.
Yeah, I think
That's
I
how I
think
feel.
Houston might get an early lead. Houston might be up
Yeah,
at halftime. Baltimore may have to fight their way back into this, and in the fourth quarter when the pressure's off and the crowd kicks in and it starts getting colder and they're out on outdoors, I think Baltimore puts it away late, close
Yeah,
game.
that's how I feel too, and, I think Baltimore has a plan for how they're gonna win this game offensively, and I think they might be trailing in this game, and Lamar starts running, he wears down the Houston defense, and
Yeah,
like you said, and they
yeah,
have the best one of the best kickers in the league. So, yeah,
yeah.
I think Baltimore gets it done, but I think it might be a little bit of a struggle. So shout out to Houston. I mean, I don't have any beef with Houston. They probably have beef with us, but, you know,
Who doesn't?
yeah, I mean, to me, that's an irrelevant franchise to me personally. So I don't that's gonna if you take a soundbite out of that, you're gonna think I'm a dickhead. But what I mean is like they don't really cross my mind often. So I'm happy for them. Like I have no beef with them at all. But like I said, I like this Baltimore team and I think, not only are they the 1 seed in the AFC, I consider them the favorite. So all right,
They
we got the
are.
same picks here.
Yeah.
So the team that shall not be named, the Green Bay Packers, are heading to I almost said Candlestick Park. So I'm not that young, right? I still remember Candlestick. They're heading to
That's
Levi
impressive.
Stadium to play the San Francisco 49ers. Similar game or similar, look on spread wise for this game. San Francisco is favored by 9.5.
I think it's exact same setup. Just like Houston, Green Bay's that same team. What 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 happened to the Browns happened to us. It's the same scenario. I think Green Bay is going to do the same thing Houston did. They could go in there. There's players on that Niner team that haven't played in 3 weeks. They can get an early lead because they don't have any pressure on them. They play in outdoor conditions. They play in horrible conditions in Green Bay. They go to San Francisco. They're going to think it's beautiful. They travel well. There's Green Bay fans everywhere. They'll be loud and proud, and they'll get an early lead, and they might start thinking they're going to win. And I think in the end, San Francisco settles down. They play better defense. McCaffrey runs the ball. They win by a field goal, maybe by 5 or 6 points at the most. Green Bay covers. They keep it close to the fourth quarter. Same game. You're going to see two of the same right there.
Yeah, man, this is a tough one. I think on both sides of the ball, San Francisco presents a lot of trouble to these Green Bay Packers. But I mean, if you're the Packers going into this game, I mean, how you can't get much higher than how they are. And I mean, you have the familiarity there between LaFleur and Shanahan, similar styles. A lot of times you see in those games, either they're both going to be able to light it up or it's neither one of them are going to have success on offense because they know they're each other's game. I think there's a lot of ways that this game could be close. Um, I worry about San Francisco and Brock Purdy for the same reason I said about Baltimore. Their starters haven't played in 3 weeks. And you talk about a young guy like Purdy, and, they beat us last year, but he did not play well in that playoff game at home. I mean, I think that there's a lot of things you could do to Purdy to disrupt him, but, I mean, I'm not saying Green Bay has the same defense as like Baltimore did when they kind of exposed him, but I think it's close. I think it's close going into the second half, all the way into the fourth quarter. I think Green Bay's luck runs out, and I'm going to take San Francisco to cover. But I don't think it's I think it's more of a backdoor cover, and they win by 10 points exactly, something like that, or maybe 13 or 14 with a last minute mistake. But I think it has the potential to be a very close game. I just don't want to. I can't pick the Packers in this one, and I don't wanna, go ditto again on your pick, so I'm gonna take San Francisco to cover
Yeah.
in this game.
Yeah, you make sense. That could be the way it goes down. We both agree. We think Green Bay's got a shot to keep it close late.
But, I mean, at the same time, if Green Bay were to come out and, like, win that game, I'm not gonna be shocked because they did it to us, so, yeah,
Be
we'll
cool.
see.
See what happens.
Alright, Yeah, we'll see. That should be a good one. All right. So next up, Tampa Bay. I'm gonna set you up for a nice layup here. Tampa Bay is heading to play Detroit in the elements in 10-degree weather. All
Yeah.
right.
I
According to a staff member or some media writer, I don't know who she was, but if you didn't catch the clip, someone in Todd Bowles' interview post game from or pregame for the Detroit Lions game, a writer from somewhere in Tampa Bay asked Todd Bowles how he was going to prepare his team, the Tampa Bay Bucks, to play in the elements in Detroit in the 10-degree weather and the snow. And he just looks at her and goes, "You do realize they're playing a dome, right? They've played in the dome for their entire existence." So I mean, that's a tough look. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what happened there? Did she just is this a lot of people are saying she could be like a local, news reporter from like a local station in Tampa Bay, and she might not have any experience with football, or did she just like have a brain fart? Like, what happened there?
man, I you're gonna think I've gone soft, but I think she wasn't given the proper information and she was set up for that question. And the other thing is maybe she's not a football fan and she
Yeah,
was given that assignment last minute and she wasn't given the information. The other thing is they I thought maybe she misworded her question, but now I don't. But I was hoping that she misworded it and she meant how are they going to handle, spending 2 or 3 days in those elements where you really can't come outside your hotel because it's so cold and you
right.
know,
Yeah.
well,
Hopefully,
but
I
that
hope so.
that's definitely not what she said. So I don't have any excuse for her, but I hope that she was given a last minute assignment. She's not a sports writer. If she is a sports writer, then sign me up for that job because it didn't take much to get.
Oh man. Alright, that would the internet has stayed undefeated this week between the Eagles fan throwing the bowl of popcorn, on Sirianni, and then this question, I mean, that's just gold. Alright, so Tampa Bay is traveling to Detroit to Ford Field. Um, Detroit is 6-point favorites in this game. You're high on Baker Mayfield. How high are you on Baker Mayfield? Who do you got?
I'm high enough that Baker's going to put up a lot of points and they're going to lose. Detroit all the way. I think I would love for Tampa to win this, but I'm betting on Detroit to cover. It's going to be a big celebration, and it's going to be at the expense of the Bucks, who didn't even think they were going to get this far. So, um, and I didn't want to ruin it in the last pick, but I would love to see a Green Bay and Detroit NFC Championship. That would spark my interest. The any of
Okay.
the other matchups on the NFC side don't spark my interest. That would be insane to see Detroit hosting the Packers. Um, but I don't think the Packers are going to get there. I think Detroit gets there. I think they score big and they win. They cover. They win probably 40 to 30, something like that. 40 to 28, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's a good pick, and I think you're spot on there. As much as I wanna say I can't see Tampa Bay winning this game, as high as we are, like, did Detroit get rid of all their voodoo in that last game? I mean, there's a lot of elements there, playing Stafford again, winning that game, that was huge. But they are the Detroit Lions, and people were picking against them last game, and now you have a scenario where no one thinks they're gonna lose this game. And you got Tampa Bay coming in, like you said, farther than they should have made it. They're playing with house money. Baker just put up crazy numbers against Philly, but they have a fantastic wide receiver room, right? Um, and they have a good defense. I mean,
They do.
they held Philly to 9 points. I know it's not the same Philly offense that we're used to seeing, but still,
I predicted 6
uh,
and they got 9.
yeah,
The
that's
offense, I
pretty
knew
spot on.
there was no surprises there.
Um, but I can't do it. Give me Tampa to cover. Give me Tampa to cover,
Ooh,
the 6
ooh,
points, but
that's a bold pick there.
I can't I can't pick them to win this game outright, but I'm gonna pick them to cover, and I hope it's a good game. I hope Baker shows up.
You think it'll
I
be a
really
good
want
game?
this.
It'll be a good game.
I th I think it will be too, but, I mean, if you're Detroit right now, you gotta be stoked. Not only do you
Yeah.
have a home another home game, but you get to play the Bucks. I mean, man, that must must be nice. Alright, let's finish this off here. Kansas City in Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game. They're heading to Highmark Stadium in Buffalo to play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I know how you're gonna pick this game. Buffalo is favored by 3. What you got?
Buffalo. All year, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. I'm a fan. I love Josh Allen. I think first playoff game appearance on the road for Mahomes. That's shocking. He's never had to play on the road. They they keep beating Buffalo in the playoffs, knocking Buffalo out, but that's been in Kansas City. This is
Mhm.
Buffalo's coming out party. I think they're gonna win handily. Kansas City makes a game of it late because Buffalo is a lot like our beloved Cowboys. They don't do anything easy. They make you have a heart attack to the end. Kansas City might get it to a 3-point game, but I think Buffalo wins. If it's a 3-point spread, I'm not sure if that. I think they're spot on. I think they're spot on. Buffalo wins by a field goal.
Mm. Yeah, I this is setting up to be the Buffalo Bills season. I mean, what else can you ask for at this point, right? I mean, you had a rough start, you overcame it. You got the 2 seed. Now you get to finally host Kansas City, like you said. Kansas City just does not seem like the same team. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid. Their defense looks good. Um, but like you said, Mahomes has never traveled in the playoffs. Like that is that's insanity right there. But you can't make this stuff up. I mean, Buffalo has to win this game, right? Like if not now, when for them? I mean, I feel like they're a similar situation as Cowboys. They've had more success, but like they've had some
Yep,
playoff woes as well. Like they have to win this game. And for that
you
reason,
do.
give me the Chiefs. I hate to do it, but Buffalo, I can't buy into them. They haven't proved me they are the Cowboys of the AFC at this point to me. So give me the Chiefs. They shouldn't win this game, but Pat Mahomes does his thing. He goes in there and they win one. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm cheering for the Chiefs, but as much as I want to count them out, I mean, you're the champs until you get you get knocked off. So give me the Chiefs. Give them to me straight up.
Take it.
All right, picks are in. Um, if you have picks for any of those games, please leave them in the comments, and we will talk about that next podcast. This should be a good weekend of football. You have um, some interesting games, some games that are supposed to be blowouts maybe in day one that I think we both think that'll be a lot closer than people expect. And then, I mean, the Chiefs and Buffalo game should be fantastic regardless how that goes. And hopefully Tampa makes that game interesting in Detroit. But hey, it sucks the Cowboys are out, but at the end of the day, we're football fans first and Cowboys fans second, or maybe we're Cowboys fans first, football fans second. But as soon as the Cowboys are out, I mean, I'm just ready to watch football. It's stress free. I'm just gonna go enjoy these games. They should be good. Um, so that's you got anything left in the tank, Cowboy Reg?
That's it. I agree. I'm looking forward to the games. Just I think they're going to be 4 good games. I don't see the blowouts happening. I think we're going to have 4 really good games. Let's enjoy this weekend. No pressure. That's right. That's a good point. No pressure anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, it's good football. The other good thing is as soon as football starts the next weekend, people can stop talking shit about the Dallas Cowboys. Hopefully, I mean it'll still happen, but mostly the news should be away from the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to keep you up to date on
You
all
you
all
would
news
think.
Dallas Cowboys, but hopefully ESPN leaves him alone, for the foreseeable future. Um, like we talked about on the podcast, this could be the last dance next year for the Dallas Cowboys. We're still going to have a strong core of guys coming back. Um, let's try to make the most of this. We're going to keep you up to date on the offseason of everything that changes. If there's a change at defensive coordinator, we'll probably have an emergency podcast and talk about that. But hey, we're going to try to keep you guys as up to date as possible. Um, Again, thanks for listening this week. Please subscribe to our show. Enjoy watching playoff football this weekend. Leave some of your score predictions below. If you have thoughts about where should the Cowboys go from here, who should be our next defensive coordinator, leave those in the comments as well. If you're on Spotify, please leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a review on YouTube. Any comments that you put in the chat, we'll bring up those topics on the next podcast. I'm your host, Dallas. Cowboy Regg is with me as always. He'll continue to be here. We'll continue to be here all off season. Thank you for listening to Sons of the Star, Cowboys Nation. We're out. Go
Peace out,
boys.
guys. Go Cowboys.